Hello, welcome back to UK Election Analysis. It's May, which is a great time for election fans because it's UK election season. We've not got any majorly important elections coming up this year, but we've got some local elections, not like last year where we had some more significant local elections. We have got elections in London and a lot of our metropolitan boroughs, which are quite important and will be a good indicator for the way our country's going. In this video, as I said in the title, we're going to be rating some election broadcasts from parties that will appear usually before the news. I think on the BBC, I'm not sure if they appear on other channels, but they're quite interesting and they'll say a lot about the way the party wants to go. But I'm going to be rating them on what cut through and other factors. I think, are they a successful advert for winning over votes, or are they not really great? I think we've got four. We're going to be looking at Labour, Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and Greens. I think there's a mixture of quite good ones and bad ones. So let's have a look.
The cost of living has become a national crisis. Essentials like heating and food are spiralling out of control.
I pay what I can when I can.
It's a nightmare.
Really
Just
difficult.
can't see a way out.
The Conservatives are costing us too much.
I can't pay me energy
I can just
bills.
about get through month to month.
Bills are going through the roof, but they're not helping.
Getting paid and feeling, well, where's the money gone? I cannot afford to do the daily essentials.
My life.
I think what they're doing so far is quite good. They're sort of setting out that there's this national cost of living crisis, and the Conservatives have been in power for 12 years, so it's a really good reflection of the mood of the country, I think, and it's definitely going to be a way that they're going to get cut through to the voters. I think it's going to make even more cut through than the Partygate scandal. I think it's very important and it's very real and affecting people's lives, and it doesn't seem like in the sphere of the Westminster bubble. It seems very outside London and the Westminster issue, and that's going to be very important. And by making the Conservatives seem like they're not interested in what's happening in the country and that the rest of the country's paying for their incompetence, that's going to, I think, have a lot of cut through to the voters.
Livelihood's gone, and the cost of bills of everything has gone up.
But this government are making a mess of it.
We're hurting.
Over a decade of Tory incompetence is adding up, and we can't keep paying for their mistakes. This year, the average family is £2,620 worse off. That's flushing £7 a day down the toilet.
Quick point, I think that's really good, the £7 a day down the toilet as well, because you think there's a lot of families struggling. In fact, most families are having to cut back, and the idea of £7 that they could have that they don't have is going to be massive. I think very good.
It doesn't have to be this way. The Conservatives have chosen to raise taxes to the highest level since the Second World War. And we are the only major economy in the world to be raising taxes on working people in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
We've got the biggest fall in living standards since the 1950s. It's a disgrace. Hard-working people all over our country are struggling with the basics. But the Tory response is to raise our taxes 15 times.
Britain is at breaking point. Under this Tory government, we're all paying the price. High taxes and low growth.
But Britain can do better than this. Britain deserves better than this. We'd ease pressure on household bills right across the United Kingdom, and we'd fund this fairly through a one-off windfall tax on the oil and gas companies who are making £753 of profit.
I think this will definitely be a popular issue, although it is a national policy, it's not a local policy, and these are local elections, so perhaps they could focus more on local policy, although I do understand that's hard because it's a national advert and individual councils and Labour parties will have different policies. But I think they're not straying away from being the Labour Party, and I think that's important for all of the parties to sort of keep their identity and their party, because that's what's going to win them their base, their votes, and people want to know what they're about.
Every single second.
And then obviously all these oil and gas companies having a lot of money, and they're putting out the numbers, which I think is really good. £753 every second. I think that's going to be really effective.
That's a tax on companies operating in the North Sea who admit that recently they've made more money than they know what to do with. With Labour, you'd see household energy bills drop by up to £600. But we won't stop there. We'd start by insulating homes across the country, making them warmer and cheaper to run. We will support renewable energy by doubling onshore wind capacity in Britain, creating new future-facing jobs while saving you money on your energy bills.
I think that we're going to make more jobs, make the economy better, make you better off. It's all right, but any party can do that. So I'm not sure if that will really cut through or win any votes. I think that's important, that you can't just say, we'll make things better, NHS will be better, police be better, streets safer, education will be better, because any party can do that. So I think actually having the numbered policies and the windfall tax, which is something that other parties might not support and makes Labour stand out, I think is quite important.
And, importantly, it's energy that's sustainable and better for the environment. Enough is enough. The Tories have failed. It's time to send them a message on the cost of living crisis. And it's time to back a party with a plan to put an end to it. Because Britain deserves better. Vote Labour on May the 5th, because we're on your side.
So I've got five categories that I'm going to be rating every video on. So the first one's cut through. On this one, I thought it was all right for cut through. I gave it 8 out of 10, which I think is quite generous, but there was sort of the graphics and it's quite colourful and talking about, you know, numbers, which I think catch the attention more than sort of vague, wishy-washy policies or anything. So I gave it an 8 for cut through. Promotion of policies. Now, they did promote a few of their national policies, and I gave them a 6 for promotion of policies. But the reason it was only a 6 was because they are national policies and it's a local election. So I'm not sure if that's so great, but I think that's going to be hard, that balance between local and national. Promotion of party, I gave it a 6. They didn't particularly talk about what Labour have done or Labour councils, but they did say that Labour was on your side, and it did have that feel that Labour would perhaps be, you know, help you out, be more competent than Conservatives. It definitely did quite a good job at the start of bringing down the Conservative. Reflection of issues, I gave it a 9, because this advert is almost entirely about the cost of living crisis, which is definitely somewhere that the Labour has the Conservatives over a barrel on. And optimism, I gave it a 6. It was all right at the end, optimistic about saying what Labour would do. So overall, that's a 35 out of 50 score for that Labour advert, which I think is quite a good advert. So the next one's the Conservative advert. Let's have a look.
In just a few weeks' time, you'll be given a choice. An important choice.
First off, I just want to quickly say is I know in the UK there's not loads of budget and loads of spending on adverts, and all these adverts are probably quite cheaply made, but the music they use on this sounds like the sort of music you get off a YouTube video. It's quite funny.
About who runs your local council.
It's important because it will decide the future of your community.
It's about who keeps your streets clean, who fixes your local roads, the services that are provided.
Yeah, that they are good at, in this advert, at keeping things local, which is probably what the Conservatives want to do because they're not doing well nationally. But it is a local election, so that's quite important. They talk about things like bins and potholes. That's something Labour didn't do. So I'll give them credit for that.
And about who will keep your council tax as low as possible. As Mayor of the West Midlands, I work with hard-working local Conservative councillors day in, day out. And I see that it's Conservative-led councils who are achieving for their local communities.
We Conservatives are getting on with the job, not Labour or the Liberal Democrats. We're uniting and levelling up our communities by investing billions of pounds into our local areas. This means regenerating our high streets, improving local public transport, and protecting local culture and heritage. In fact, 20 million households are benefiting right now from our council tax rebate of £150.
I don't see why they did this, because I think perhaps because it's a council tax rebate, it seems local and the council are giving the money, but it's a national response, and it's a national response which they've been highly criticised on, so for not going further enough. So I think it's quite a bad idea. So far, it's been all right. They've it's Conservatives talking up Conservatives. Not much surprise. It's been all right. Sort of catchy and colourful, a bit like the Labour Party advert.
Nationally, Conservatives are tackling the cost.
Oh, and also I think it was quite good. I think one thing that is quite good about this advert and the Conservative message is that we're getting on with the job, and I think they are in a unique position to say that because they're the only power in Parliament control and in power in Westminster. But I think it's a good response to the Partygate. You can say, oh, yes, okay, we've messed up, we've done a few things wrong, but we are getting on with it. Yes, we've had the Partygate scandal, but we're getting on with the job. We're not playing political games, we're just getting on with the job. I think that could cut through quite a bit.
Cost of living. We've cut fuel duty by 5 pence per litre, saving drivers on average £100 per year. And from July, you'll be able to earn up to £12,570 without paying income tax or national insurance. For 30 million...
I don't think there's any point in telling people that things are getting better, look what we're doing, it's great, because people know how things are doing, because they know how their lives are. And at the moment, things aren't so great for people. So I don't... saying, oh, we're doing all this stuff, and people are like, well, it doesn't matter what you're doing, because I know how things are for me, and they're not great. Prices are going up. There might be a 5 pence cut in fuel tax, but the prices of fuel are going up loads.
People. That's 330 quid back in their pockets and purses.
That's real action to tackle the cost of living and reduce household bills. Meanwhile, Labour and the Liberal Democrats are just interested in political games, focused on political point scoring rather than delivering local services.
Conservative councils fix, on average, 4 times as many potholes as Labour councils.
I think that's really good, because people really do care about roads, they care about potholes, and I think Labour didn't do this enough in their advert, talk about what Labour councils have done, and I think saying we fixed 4 times as many potholes is really going to cut through to voters. You know, especially in rural councils where that's a bigger deal and more people drive. I suppose probably the reason that Conservative councils have fixed that many is probably because they are empowering more rural constituencies with more rural roads, but I still think that will really cut through because it's one of the top issues in local elections.
Conservative councils recycle more than Labour councils.
Whoever you are, wherever you live, you face a very simple choice on the 5th of May. Conservative councils who deliver better local services and lowest council tax.
Or councils run by Labour, Liberal Democrats and Independents who are obsessed with political game playing and will undo all the hard work. It's a clear choice. Help us to get on with the job and to deliver on the people's priorities.
On the 5th of May, vote Conservative.
Vote Conservative.
Vote Conservative.
Vote Conservative.
Vote Conservative.
On the 5th of May, vote Conservative. We're getting on with the job.
We're getting on with the job.
We're getting on with the job.
We're getting on with the job. We're getting on with the job.
So overall, I thought it was an alright advert. Nothing special, but I don't think it was rubbish. It might persuade a few people to go out and vote Conservative. And that message of we're getting on with the job, I think will do alright. And sort of play into that idea that Conservatives aren't messing about and they're getting on with things. Cut through, I gave it a 4. I thought it was just a generic advert. I don't really think anyone's going to be, oh wow, that's interesting advert. It's not really going to cut through. But promotional policies, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I think they did all right in this. They promoted a lot of the policies they created to deal with the cost of living crisis, which I think that's all right. But like I said, people know how things are going for themselves. They don't need you to tell them things are getting better because they can see that for themselves. But they did talk about potholes, which I thought was really good. I think that could really do quite well. Promotional Party 6, I think this did all right. I think they talked about Conservative councillors are hard-working, getting on with the job, and the Conservatives will get things done. reflection of issues, I gave it a 5. They reflected some issues like potholes, like I said, but they didn't talk about the cost of living crisis that much. Probably best not. And optimism, I gave it 6 out of 10 because it seemed somewhat optimistic, talking about how Conservative councils are getting on with things, but you can't be that optimistic when you're in power, because you're just basically saying we'll keep things how they are, we'll keep things going. So I think it was hard for them to actually get that optimism across. Anyway, the next one is the Liberal Democrats advert.
Everywhere I go across our great United Kingdom, I see the decency and strength of the British people. Life's been tough for lots of people, raising families, caring for others, and playing by the rules.
Now, more than ever, it's time for a fair deal. But this Conservative government is letting you down badly and taking you for granted.
We're 27 seconds into this broadcast, and I think it's pointless. That's just been wasted. We've not learnt anything about the Liberal Democrats. They've not said much about what's going on in the country. They've just mentioned soaring bills, which I suppose is probably something they should focus on. But all we've really seen is generic slogans, sayings, and Ed Davey speaking to people. I think that's just wasted time.
Soaring bills are overwhelming too many families. But these Conservatives either don't care or don't get it, and do nothing to help.
Instead, they're raising unfair taxes again and again.
They've plunged our NHS into crisis, making cancer patients wait and leaving loved ones desperate for that urgent ambulance.
And Conservative MPs had voted time and time again to let water companies keep pumping their filthy sewage straight into our rivers. All that must change. That's why more and more people are turning to the Liberal Democrats. They know we work hard for our communities, we hear your concerns, and never take you for granted.
It's why so many people supported us in True Blue Buckinghamshire and North Shropshire. They told us they'd voted Conservative all their lives, but never again.
Every vote for the Liberal Democrats counts. It's a vote to elect a strong local champion who will fight for a fair deal for your community and for your family.
That's why we want a fair deal with an emergency tax cut to save struggling families £600. With a new ambulance fund so that if you have to call 999, you know they will be there. And £15 billion to help our children to catch up on the learning they've lost to COVID. And isn't it about time we tax companies to clean up their mess?
I think this advert's really bad. It's really wishy-washy, but the one thing that might cut through to voters, and they might be able to get headway on, is the sewage, because that is something people are talking about, and it's one of the only things they've taken a strong stance on, separate from a lot of the other parties. I think they'll do well in the next election, but I don't think it will be in this local election, and the next general election. But I don't think it will be because of adverts like this. But I suppose it could be said that perhaps this wishy-washy generic advert might be what they wanted, because Liberal Democrats are quite good at being like a chameleon, reflecting what their local areas want. In the Cheshire-Amersham by-election, the National Liberal Democrats supported HS2, but their local candidate opposed it, and that did really well in that constituency. And by the Liberal Democrats nationally not really talking much about it, they managed to allow their local candidate to reflect the community, and they might be doing the same. They probably will be doing the same, especially since it's local elections in this advert and in this election.
Rather than getting away with dumping sewage into our rivers, everyone has a right.
I hope that river didn't have sewage in, because I think it's a bit unfair letting the dog go in it.
To enjoy the beauty of nature with wonderful clean rivers and open green spaces.
That's the fair deal the Liberal Democrats are fighting for, and it's the fair deal the British people deserve.
I think this was quite a poor advert. Just generic. Didn't say a lot. They said, oh, we'll make things better. Look, the health service will be better. The rivers will be better. You have more green space. But they didn't really say how they were going to do it. They mentioned the tax cut, but I think what Labour did well in their advert was they saying how they would pay for the tax cut. And I think all parties are talking about raising spending, about making services better. So I think it will be the way they actually pay for it which will make them stand out for one another. Liberal Democrats on this advert, I think I gave them a 3 out of 10 for cut through. Really generic, wishy-washy. The advert music made me want to go to sleep. Promotional policies, I gave it a 5. They promoted a couple policies about the ambulances, the tax cuts and the sewage pumping, which the sewage might do alright locally, and perhaps I don't know what powers the council has on that sort of thing, but they could, people might think, oh, there's dumping sewage locally in our rivers, and if the Liberal Democrats can highlight that, that might do alright. Promotional Party 6, I think this was their strongest point, because they seem like that sort of nice, wholesome, kind local party that's, you know, that you can trust, and I think this advert was alright. It didn't contradict that message. Reflection of issues, 5. In fact, no, 4, because I thought it didn't really talk about much issues other than the sewage and the cost of living. But the cost of living, every party's going to really try and drill in, and the sewage, I suppose, did alright, but I don't think it's going to get a high mark. And optimism, I gave it a 5. Just, it was alright. It was quite optimistic about things like green spaces, things will get better, but no real message in that advert. So next we'll look at the Green Party advert.
Okay, Adrian, we've been challenged to list 30 Green Party achievements in 2 minutes. My first one is going to be better housing for Bristol's children in care.
Right, lots to pick from. I'll start with our work to save local bus services in Suffolk. What next?
Lower council tax bills for the poorest residents in our borough.
Greens have implemented a clean air zone in Sheffield.
In the House of Lords, we defeated the worst of the government's anti-protest laws.
Insulating homes to bring down people's energy bills and create green jobs here in Norfolk.
150 heat pumps instead of oil boilers in mid-Suffolk.
Bringing more affordable houses back into use in Burnley.
Setting up a community garden in Norwich.
Tackling air pollution in our city.
Okay, how many is that?
Supported the local community and parish councils in saving their surgery.
Tackling fly-tipping hotspots.
In Exeter, I've worked with council tenants to get vital home repairs done.
I've been cleaning our communities, improving our green spaces and helping residents feel safer in Newport.
A budget of £75,000 to help the community in Lyme Regis transition to net zero by 2030.
Powering the future with solar panels on new homes in the Wyre Forest.
I've got the government to stop discriminating against young care leavers and rough sleepers so they've got more money to put a roof over their heads.
A youth employment hub in Brighton and Hove.
Greens campaign to save 30 family homes from demolition in our town.
In Stroud, we're investing 180 million to decarbonise our housing stock.
There's lots of great examples of Greens improving transport in their local areas too.
Free buses every weekend for everybody, everywhere in Herefordshire, thanks to our coalition.
We're really pleased there's a safe crossing at the Red Lion.
And I worked with my community to stop HGVs going through our villages at unsociable hours.
And making sure our much-loved green spaces are protected.
Provide much-needed education on the natural world and create just another reason for people to visit our wonderful district.
A rewilding project that's boosting nature across our whole district.
Campaigning to save ancient woodlands.
We've planted over 500 new trees in a single village in Derbyshire.
New climate change committee at the Bletchley and Fenny Stratford Town Council.
Saved 3 acres of riverside biodiversity corridor in Stowmarket, Suffolk.
We're fighting to save this woodland and meadow
from becoming more of these warehouses.
30 green achievements in 2 minutes.
Nice one.
This one I think was actually quite a good advert. I think initially it didn't seem like anything special. They did that sort of, we're on FaceTime, and it, obviously like most of the other adverts, it probably didn't have a high budget. But I think what they tried to do was say all the things that Greens have done, and I think that's important because people don't want to feel like they're voting pointlessly, and the Greens sometimes feel like, well, is that a pointless vote? Is it idealistic? But by saying everything they've done, I think that's quite a good way of doing things. And in the Conservative advert, you saw a lot of people saying we're getting things done, things are getting done. It's the Conservatives that are delivering. But in this, it was like show, not tell. They're saying not we're getting things done, but this is what we've got done, and we got this done, and we got this done, and we got this done, and we've not even got that many councillors, and we're getting this done. We're pressuring our council to do this, and I think that was really effective. So cut through 6 out of 10. They talked a lot about what they had been doing locally, and that's crucially important in a local election, and I think that stays really important with what's actually happening in the election. They talked about a mixture of quite big deal things, like I think buses was free on the weekend in Herefordshire. I think that was quite a big thing, or just a crossing. Both are very important to people. HGV drivers, I thought that was interesting because I've heard that on the news before, and that affects a lot of rural communities, so that will probably cut through in a few communities. So promotion of policies, I gave 6 because they talked mainly about what they have done and what they're going to do. But that was a hard one for all the parties, I think. Promotion of party, 9. Absolutely brilliant, I think, at showing that Greens are getting things done in their communities. And probably a lot of parties aren't going to waste a lot of time attacking the Greens, so they can sort of promote themselves, and I think a lot of parties will attack the Liberal Democrats, Labour and Conservatives. Reflection of issues, I gave 7 because they didn't really reflect any of those big national issues like Partygate, the cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine, but they really did well in local issues like HGV drivers or warehouses being built or local housing needs. And I thought what they did what was really good was by actually naming the places like Stowmarket, Suffolk or Sheffield. There's quite a range of places actually, and I think that was quite good. And optimism, I gave it 8, high score, very optimistic. They didn't actually talk about many negative things, didn't actually really talk about the other parties at all, just talking about Greens, voting Greens are getting things done. If you vote Green, things will get done. I thought it was quite a solid advert. So, hope you enjoyed that advert. Oh, sorry, out of 50, that's 36. I hope you enjoyed the advert and all the adverts, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to see anything like this again, just give it a like to indicate that this was popular. And I hope to see you next video.